Hi everyone. I just wanted to give people a quick update since the last video I made. Um, I wanted to kind of catch people up on how things are going. Right now, I'm actually looking for a job. It turns out I got to keep my old one, but it was actually going to be ending anyway. Not because of anything I did. It only lasts until the summer, and I knew that going in. And I've been kind of passively looking for a job. I actually applied to the Reconciling Ministries Network. Unfortunately, I didn't get that one. But yeah, everything is actually starting to go okay. I have a path forward. I have a next steps. I know what I need to do. The only thing is, it is going to be a little stressful getting it all done because, well, it's just new. It's not something I've had to do before, and it is kind of scary. I guess my growth is a little stunted. Chalk it up to the autism, chalk it up to just being immature, whatever. One thing I did decide to do is I did decide to have my car towed, and repossessed, which is unfortunate, but one thing it does do is it does cut the one of the few remaining umbilical cords back to Jacksonville. So I'm really kind of starting from ground zero. I will have to eventually rebuild my credit, but I no longer am burdened by that debt. Well, I kind of still am, but I'm no longer burdened by having to make monthly car payments or have my car repossessed. I just went ahead and did a voluntary repossession. Selling it was not an option. Refinancing was not an option. I couldn't even really afford the insurance or the local Illinois and Chicago taxes, to be completely frank. So that wasn't going to work. I've applied to several places. I'm also looking for new housing. I'm trying to find people to be roommates with, because that's a whole lot cheaper than finding a place of my own, because any place I get on my own, even like a crappy studio apartment, is going to be like still way out of my price range in the city, and I still have to live in this city in order to qualify for certain jobs. There's a local ordinance that requires certain contractors and workers for the city to actually live within the city limits. There are some advantages to it, but for someone who's trying to break into the city, it is a little inconvenient. I'm not moving out of the city just because I feel like I'm too good for the place. I actually want to live here. I love this city. I love Chicago. So one of the things I wanted to kind of discuss was a couple books I've been reading. Two of the books I've been reading were Rescuing Jesus, how people of color, women, and queer Christians are fighting to take back evangelicalism, as well as Gay Christian. I'm sorry, it's not called Gay Christian. It's called, oh, shoot. I actually had it a second ago. But anyway, it's by Matthew Vines, and it's about, a sort of argument that makes the case for, it was called God and the Gay Christian. It's an argument that makes the case for including acceptance and affirmation of same-sex relationships within an evangelical framework. Now, I actually have been reading both books. I finished the first one that I mentioned. There are a few things that I will say about the core premises of the book. The first book was written by a journalist who is not an evangelical. She was raised an evangelical, or rather she joined the evangelical movement early in her life, but kind of moved away from it as they become increasingly homophobic. God and the Gay Christian is also from an evangelical point of view. So both books actually, I actually would dispute some of their core premises, as far as like the sort of justness of the evangelical movement or the evangelical worldview to begin with. But I think at the same time, though, both books are, since they're appealing to evangelical Christians who do subscribe to ideas like biblical inerrancy and the Bible being much more literal than I do, because they are subscribing to that premise and using the premise that the Bible is not inerrant is simply a non-starter with some people, since they're appealing to that particular demographic as their intended audience. I think that they can be a very useful tool towards at least getting a very large subculture within our society on board with what we need them to do for us, which is to affirm and to stop at least stop trying to take away our right to use the bathroom or to target us for particular hatred. I did want I probably should have cleaned that area. One thing I will say, though, is I do kind of disagree with sort of the core views of the book about biblical inerrancy. When I look at the Bible, I've started, like, one of the things that I started to do when I became a Christian, when I started to accept it, is that the Bible is not just a book. It's actually a series of books, and each book is a different genre, different author, and a sort of a different way of looking at the world. So when I look at, say, Genesis or Exodus and such, the truth is most of those events not only didn't happen, but could not possibly have happened. There was no flood. There was no Garden of Eden, not at least on this plane of existence. The Jews were not enslaved in Egypt. That said, I still think that they are true in a way. They are revealing of the truth of how Jews felt their relationship with God was. I suspect that those people who initially wrote those stories probably didn't believe them as being exact literal truth either. I believe that most of what those first 5 books or so represent is a very mythological, larger-than-life kind of tall tale view of that people's history based on oral tradition. So it's not right to say, something, you need to believe in that because in Noah's flood or something like that. I think it's not something that literally happened. It is, however, very important to understand and to study. What do these stories say about our Creator? Even though they're not true, they can still have an impact that goes far, far beyond things that even are factually true. So it's an idea I want to maybe develop a little bit further, maybe develop into its own video. But I will say that you should be checking out those books. Take a good look at them. They have a really good argument against some of the more toxic views of the evangelical movement that uses their own core premises against them, or at least rather reclaims that particular viewpoint for people who have been marginalized from it. So yes, go check it out. Thank you. Bye.